So, when you record those podcasts and about 150 times throughout the episode, you're like, I'm going to have to listen to this one 30 times. It's that good. That is today's podcast. So let me share some nuggets of just the notes. I took 2 pages of notes while recording and while listening, and I'm not going to read them all to you, but let me give you a taste and a flavor of what you're going to get in today's podcast. Did you make $20,000 a year as a 7-year-old to start your entrepreneurship journey? How having $1 million of debt at the age of 20 changed the game. How getting fixated on a business created 7 figures of debt that I just referenced. How ideas don't matter. Have you transitioned from being an entrepreneur to a business owner? How entrepreneurship is a drug. The difference between entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and advisors. Do you have a sitting period to validate your ideas? Have you ever bought air in a jar? With a pretty funny story around that one. The real secrets to getting to 7 figures and beyond. The only 2 paths that you can take as an entrepreneur. The most important question that you can ask yourself 3 times a day to succeed. Don't make any decisions until you're neutral. How getting coached by Richard Branson changed an addiction to entrepreneurship. How eliminating goals skyrocketed results. And if you don't reverse engineer how you're going to spend your time, it will be taken away from you and no sustainable results will ever be created. How bubble baths are the secret to becoming a deca-millionaire. How alignment is a silent whisper that you must listen to with acute hearing. Do you watch the invisible string in your life? And if you don't lose it all at least once, you are missing out. And so here's my recommendation. Listen and listen a few times. And if you pick up any nuggets in today's episode, share it with a friend because this one is loaded. You share it with a couple entrepreneurs, they are going to skyrocket their business and their results with what's shared in today's episode. So I won't keep you in the intro any longer. I love you. I appreciate you. So here's the intro and here's the podcast. Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. And I am stoked because today I get to hang out with my twin, my bald brother, big beard, beautiful glasses, husband, father, entrepreneur, somebody that I actually highly respect. I get a little jealous of his brain, but you might know him as Scott Oldford or Omnipresence or the ROI or the Nuclear Effect or the Modern Business Academy. But just like me, he has his hands in everything and stands for consciousness and connection and care, is vulnerable, is authentic, and I couldn't think of a better person to have on the show. And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome the incredible Scott Oldford to the show. So Scott, welcome to the show.
What a great introduction. That was one of the best. Thank you. I'm excited to be here, excited to jam on whatever we get ourselves into today.
I know we were laughing. I wish I hit record. We were bonding over our beards, our bald heads, fathership, and then he proceeded to dribble a drink down his chin, which would have made the best B-roll clip ever, and I missed it.
Would have been best.
And so, yeah, and just for context, I believe most of my audience knows who you are, but one of my favorite things that I read is that your first foray into entrepreneurship was selling eggs at 7 years old.
Yep.
And then making
it was
10 G's.
20 grand.
20
grand.
20.
Yeah, it was kind of like into the second year that I made like 20, just about 20 grand Canadian. My dad just brought home some chickens. We were on an acreage, my dad brought home some chickens, like literally like tiny little chicklets. And I was like, well, why don't we get more of these and I don't know, sell some of them. And then 2 years later, we end up with hundreds of chickens. And so, it was like it was like me and my pop, my grandfather, we really bonded and had a good time doing that. I think he did more than I did, but I somehow ended up with the money. But that's kind of what happened in my life overall in general. So, but it was fun. It was a good way to learn marketing and sales and delivery and all those types of things.
I feel like that alone collapses so much of my brain where I'm like, you basically just had a 23-year head start on me, if I'm doing the math correctly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, yeah. This makes a lot of sense because I like to be fully honest, and I'll be really blunt with you. since the day that I found you, we met, connected, I don't know, 4 years ago or so. Every
Yep.
time I saw you post, I was so jealous of the science-y, like structure-y side of your brain. Cause I'm like,
Yep.
that makes so much sense. I can't do that. I'm just like a
Right.
vomited on the wall and I'll get you there, but I can't tell you what structure or what systems. And it took so much work to learn like
Yeah.
models and processes. And so
Takes a while.
have you always like kind of thought like that? Because I feel like everything I ever see from you, I
Yeah.
look at it and I'm like, this is a masterpiece. Like, I'm like, that makes sense. That makes sense. It's
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think, um, well, I'm 31 now,
okay.
right? So I was an entrepreneur literally since the time I feel like I could breathe. And so I think some people come out of the womb just being an entrepreneur, like they just straight up like come out of the womb. And my son's 10 weeks old tomorrow. And like there's just certain things he come out of the womb and he's like, I'm like, oh, like I already get part of his personality already. Like he just came out that way. And then there's part that's nurture, of course. And so I think part of it is, and I think it's really important to realize this, which is like who I am is who I am. And I just sort of came onto the planet with a certain level of, I don't want to say skill set, but like a way of seeing things a certain way. And I think that that's really important when you go to compare. Well, I don't think you should ever compare yourself, but when you go to compare yourself, you're like, all right, here's what I'm good at, and here's what other people are good at, and then I can get good at it. I get good at certain things, but maybe not as easily. And so I think I was always like that strategist in my mind, but not necessarily from like a super intellectual side, more of like business is my art, right? But when you have that feeling of like, wow, that's a masterpiece, that's pretty much how I feel as well. Alongside of, okay, on to the next one, or it kind of sucks. I'm just going to keep it there and go on to the next thing. But there is this sense of like when I write a post or when I do a video or when I construct a business or I create a strategy, I'm like, oh, now it's out of me. I'm so glad it's out of me, and let me get on to the next one. And so I think a large part of it's the amount of experience I've had,
Mm-hmm.
and just repetition over and over and over and over. It's just like it's impossible not to get good at something when you've been doing it for like 20 years.
Yeah, man.
Or give up, or you should give up if you're not good at that point. You should probably give up.
Yeah, and I think that's such an interesting concept. And I'm actually going to start selfishly asking some questions because I'm already like finding the through lines. I'm like, oh, that's an
Yep.
undertow that I want to know. And so,
Yeah.
when we think about this lens of like repetition and reps and practice and things like that, you're like, oh, I'm so glad that's out of me. It also sounds like you have this proclivity to not have this like codependent relationship on what you create, which I feel
Yeah.
like gives you this vision to see like what works and what doesn't. Was it always that way, or was that like a skill set that you had to develop?
Yeah. So when the reason that I ended up $1 million in debt by the time I was 21. So I was, I had a $1 million business by the time I was 16. I was not a millionaire. I had $1 million business, being a millionaire, two totally different things. We can talk about that at a different time. But, but I had a lot of momentum. I had good cash flow, these different types of things. I ended up $1 million in debt. The reason I ended up $1 million in debt is because I got fixated on a business. Okay. And I don't talk about this business very much, but I still own the trademark. It's called Ads on the Move. Okay. And the whole premise was, you've got a car, it's sitting out there doing nothing. It's not making you any money. It's actually costing you money. What would happen if we paid you $250 to put advertising that was pre-selected based upon your taste from a brand on your car? Now, I built this whole thing. I had 14 team members. We were building this. We had contracts. We had investment. I had, I don't know, $1 million of my own capital into this. And I got fixated on it. And that's the reason I ended up $1 million in debt, because like Kevin O'Leary says, you got to figure out, sometimes you got to go and take your ideas and put them behind the shed and let them go. And I wasn't willing to do that. I got fixated on it to the point where I took out debt, and I took out, I made dumb decisions from my ego because I wanted that to happen. And that taught me that the ideas don't matter. All right. Ideas really don't matter. I believe as a collective consciousness, an idea is probably given to 1 million people at once, across the planet. Okay. And so my belief is the universe has something that it wants to have inside of this reality. It gives that idea to 1 million, 2 million, 5 million people. Some people toss it out right away. Some people pursue it. And it's, look at Facebook. So many people there was MySpace. So many people try to create a social network. And so it requires the right marketing, the right sales, the right operations, the right team, the right mindset, the right financials, all of that thing to create something that's successful. Whether or not you look at Facebook and see it as successful today or what it'll be in the future is regardless. It became one of the top businesses in the world but it was only an idea. And so that, when I was 19 to 21, that taught me ideas don't matter. The execution matters. And once I have the feeling, it's like a poop, I got to get out. You know what I mean? And so once it's out, then it is, okay, how do I structure this now so it can live without me? Which is something entrepreneurs don't have a really great time with, because entrepreneurs are great starters, terrible operators, and even worse scalers a lot of the time. And so a long answer with a story to answer that is no, I wasn't always like that. But that really helped me understand, okay, you know what? Let me not be attached to ideas. Let me just have fun doing my craft.
Yeah, man, I love that. Like, one of
Yeah.
the things that I love about you and why I've been a fan since the first time we connected is I love your humility, but also your transparency and watching your growth and watching your journey. And I feel like I've been gifted the ability to notice that over time and how you share about those lessons and that ego. But do you now, where you currently are now, and we'll get into what you're doing because it's a beautiful, beautiful ecosystem. I think, would you call it your equity triangle? What is that?
Yeah, I would definitely, I would say that it's my, web of consciousness. I don't know. I haven't figured out a name for it yet, but
Yeah,
we're getting
I'm
there.
sure it'll only be a matter of time where I'm like, how the fuck did he think about that genius name? And there we go. You're gonna poop it out.
If it was a genius name, it was my wife, not me. Any
Yeah,
of my names are terrible.
whenever you poop that one out, shoot me a text and let me know what it is so I can give you some edification, because I'm a massive, massive fan.
I
But
appreciate that.
now 20 plus years of entrepreneurship, 31, started at 7, and looking back, you have your hands in a lot of pots and you've learned the lessons of riding it till it dies. I think the whole the captain goes down with the ship is silly. I'm like, why don't you just get on a lifeboat and sail another ship,
Yeah,
right? But I had
yeah,
to learn those lessons as well. But
yeah.
now where you are looking back, what's your current barometer of how do you measure that? When you get the idea out of does this one belong behind the shed, or does this one, can I give this one a little input? Can I give it some oomph or some nos or something like that? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so one of the things that I really that I'm still working on very much is transitioning from being an entrepreneur. So first it was a transition from being an entrepreneur to a business owner.
Mm.
And I talk about this in my book, The Nuclear Effect, and I also talk about it in my upcoming book, Million in the Red, which is going to be releasing in December of 2022. Actually, just literally finished the manuscript, 83,000 words this morning.
Jesus, congratulations.
And thank you. And so the first transition is from entrepreneur to business owner. Now you can take one of these. Sometimes you're just automatically an investor and not an entrepreneur. You don't necessarily, but if we were an entrepreneur, so first you got to get good at being a business owner. Okay. Which is really hard because entrepreneurship is about decisions, dopamine, serotonin, just like the go, 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 go. The entrepreneurship is very much in willful and intuitive consciousness, right? You intuit, you feel your gut, then you make decisions, and then you go and you get things done. And then a business owner is more like intellectual, intuitive. And this is another one of the models I have around levels of consciousness for business, which I'm also releasing a kind of in-depth guide with Frederick Dotson, which built the levels of consciousness framework, and he's 30 years doing consciousness research. So the business owner is very, very different. And then you have an investor and an advisor. And so I'm an amazing entrepreneur. I'm a pretty darn good business owner. I'm becoming a good advisor, and I'm probably, well, I'll put it this way: until my net worth is 100 million, and I got a couple more years to get there, I would say that I'm not a good investor yet, but I'm getting there. So, but here's the difference: is I now identify it being an advisor and investor before an entrepreneur. Okay, now this was massive difference. This was a massive change in the way I saw the world. Okay, it's because an investor makes very few decisions very slowly and then waits on those decisions and don't change up on those decisions quickly. Now, that doesn't work for an entrepreneur. If an entrepreneur made very few decisions, their business wouldn't get anywhere, starting off or really, anywhere else. And so today, being an advisor, being an investor is a very, very, very different skill set that, again, I'm working on every single day, that I'm getting better with every single day. But I had to evolve past being an entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur needs a very specific level of consciousness that's required, and very specific way of life that's required, even, the amount of hours you work, the amount of how you manage things. And so that created this natural progression of, when I see an idea, I say, okay, I don't want to start anything anymore. Okay. Because I'm done. Like I just feel done starting things. So when I have an idea, I'm like, okay, cool. I have an idea. I like that. Is there something out there I can buy to get the momentum right from the get-go? Right. Is there someone I can go and buy a percentage of the company? I don't want to run it. I don't want to do it. I want them to run it, but I know that that's a good idea. Can I put the capital? Can I put the audience? Can I put the mentorship and advisory behind something to make that happen, so that I don't have to sort of burst this, right? I just kind of like, I feel like I'm out of birth, like I'm done birthing, at least right now.
Minus an 83,000 word manuscript, but
Right. Well, I'm fine. I like birthing creative projects of like words and video and those types of things.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like businesses, I've just come to realize that that's not the reason I'm here anymore. That's not the reason I'm here. And it's also not really even, I work like 15 hours a week. So that doesn't work. You can't do a startup on 15 hours a week. I'm sorry. Like, I'm all about like the anti-hustle thing, but like there is a time in your life where you have to put the work in, and 15 hours ain't going to do shit.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, cool, sweet. Let me advise the person who's ready to spend 60 hours a week in the next 5 years, figuring this shit out and getting it all done. And like that type of thing. And that's where I found myself. But I've put in my 23 years to be able to get there. And I don't think that place is great. Like, you got to be kind of good to be an advisor and investor, and if not, you'll lose your shirt.
Yep.
But that's how I look. That's more so how now I look at what I want to do. And then I've also defined, all right, these are the things that I'm going to be focused on. Everything else, doesn't matter how sexy it is, take a hike.
Yep.
These are the only things I want to do. And then when I find something that's outside of that, I let it sit for a while. So I'm starting up, I'm advising a water company right now, because why? Because water is going to be more expensive than gold in 30 years. And because I want to secure water for my family, and I want to secure water for, I want great tasting water, right? That's just a personal interest. That's just, I'm just having fun with that. Right. But that's now more along the lines of, all right, intuitively, I've loved water for years. Let me kind of like understand it a little bit more.
Yeah, man.
Anyways, that's another long spiel about.
I prefer your long spiels because I'm a marketer, so I love the stories. It helps with the context. But I'm gonna ask you a longer question as you sip your beautiful H2O. As I'm like laughing as the water boy quotes are like screaming through my head right now.
Aged 44 years, this one is.
Aged 4. Oh my God. You're going to have to tell me where to get that so I can try it. Cause like
I'll send you the link.
I'm that guy that owned a coffee company. So I'm like, okay, what's the world's most expensive coffee? Cause I just have to try it to see what all the hype is about. So,
yep.
But I did. This is a completely different tangent, but I did watch this incredible documentary about like a water bar in like LA where they have like all this sourced water, and my mind was blown.
It's amazing. I just I just ordered one that they literally go out and they got to go out for like 50 days and literally collect the iceberg, and then they bring it back, and you're literally drinking icebergs. And then there's both sides of that, which I don't really know if we need to be really drinking icebergs, but it's nice to try it. I wouldn't be drinking it all the time, but it is interesting.
I'm laughing because it reminds me, what was it during when the whole world shut down? People started selling air in jars, and everybody was like,
"Oh yeah, they're killing it." I bought some. I saw a Facebook ad, and I was like, "Listen, I bought this before COVID. I bought this back in like 2019. I saw this ad, and these guys are selling air from Banff, Canada. I'm Canadian." And so I buy some of this air. I bought like $250 worth of air because I'm like, fuck, I like, let's see what this air is about. And I'm like, I'll support a fellow entrepreneur selling air. And I get it. And I was like, this is gonna catch on. And I'm like, you what? And at the time, it was like a little startup, and it blew up. And I was like, of course it's gonna like people. And you know what's hilarious? I was in Colorado at a wedding, and at the wedding, there's fucking air canisters because we're up so high from the company. And I'm like, here we are selling air.
Here we are selling air. Yeah, my wife gets mad at me. She's like, "What are all these boxes?" I was like, "Well, I saw an entrepreneur and the ad was good and I believe in them." And she's like, "What are we going to do with all this stuff?" I'm like, "I just donate it or I give it away." And I was like, "But I do the same thing."
Yep.
There's a
They're so
funny
good.
story. I've actually never told the story, but you'll probably appreciate this. My wife and I, this is like early on in my entrepreneurial days, like 2011, and my wife and I were laying in bed when we were dating, and for whatever reason we couldn't sleep, and we had the TV on, and an infomercial came on for bacon bowls. And
Bacon bowl.
I was a food blogger, right? So I was a food blogger in the paleo world. So I used bacon all the time, and I didn't have my wallet with me. I was at her house, and I was like, "Hey, can I borrow your credit card real quick? I want to buy one of those bacon bowls." And it was like two bacon bowls were like $11 or something. And then I went to the website, I bought them while we were laying in bed, and the next morning she's like, "What the fuck did you spend $180 on last night?" And I was like, "Bacon bowls." And she's like, "Why?" And I was like, "Because every upsell that came, I actually believed it." And then we showed up and we had 48 bacon bowls show up to the house. And I only ever used them once because they were horrible. But I totally like fell
Oh,
into that trap, and I thought it was the funniest thing ever.
yeah, I'm like one of those guys. I'm same. I buy every upsell and just
Yeah.
like give it to me. I'm like I love a good upsell. Me and my wife, we love a good upsell. Give me an upsell, cross sell, down sell. Give me all the sells.
Yeah.
I'm the sucker with the Amex ready to buy.
Yep. And if they're
Um,
good, like if they're aligned, I'll go from like,
yeah,
"Oh, I'm breaking this down," to, "Oh, I'm going to support you because this one's actually
yeah,
good." Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yep,
Good. My
yep,
accountant loves it at the end of the year. He's like,
yeah.
"What's this?" I was like, Miscellaneous research. Can we put that in the research category?" And they're
R and
like,
D.
"What were you researching?" I'm like, "Marketing funnels, upsells, copy, like, oh yeah, we've had some very interesting conversations come tax time. So,
Yeah,
um,
I'm with you on that one.
one of the questions I have, and I love this about you, like you've talked about a few times already, like I work 15 hours a week, I have my day very intentionally scheduled, but you also, on the other hand, talk about how much you invest in yourself and like your thinking
Yeah,
time and that stuff. And I feel like that's an art that's missed. I watch like an entrepreneurship in your definition specifically, like living off this dopamine and the external
yeah,
validation that comes from it, and almost being like a byproduct or reactive to what's happening versus shifting that mindset to being in the driver's seat. So like, what does that look like for you? Because you might quote unquote work on a business for 15 hours a week, but I know you work like 30 plus hours a week on yourself and presence and consciousness. And so
yeah,
when did
yeah.
that become a big priority for you? And like, how do you prioritize that now?
Yeah. Well, I think if you want to get the seven figures, it mostly about it's a lot about market fit and getting your marketing. I mean, most getting the seven figures is marketing and sales. If we're talking most businesses, and then if you want to get multiple seven figures, it's delivery and operations and team. And if you want to go beyond that, it's all mindset.
Yep.
Pretty much the whole thing is mindset.
Yep.
And that yeah, there are things in between that are mindset driven and that will stop you. But like I didn't have a lot of the mindset blocks that I see of most entrepreneurs have because I never had a 9 to 5. I had amazing parents that never told me no, which had both benefits and not so good benefits. But the biggest one for me was definitely the wounded parts of me that was a kid that was 360 pounds that were bullied when I
Yep.
was a teenager. The desire and the want to have influence solely because of significance, not
Yeah.
because I actually wanted to like spread some wonderful message. And so I've spent a lot of time dissecting that over the last whoever know, I mean, really since 2017. And the beauty with entrepreneurship is once you're successful, you either become depressed or you kind of end up going down this road of spirituality and consciousness and understanding yourself. Like there's only really there's only two paths from my experience. And because once you have enough money to be able to sit by yourself and not have to worry about anything, you start thinking, and those thoughts start to become dangerous because you start looking at what was and what has been and why you look at the world a certain way. And then you either suppress that information or you become curious on that information. You spend a lot of time on that. So I spent a lot of time on that. And, now I probably don't spend as much time on that, because I feel like, at least to this current level, I have a good understanding of my belief system. I have a good understanding of what works for me. And I've, done the thousands upon thousands of hours of therapy and hypnotherapy and personal development and so on and so forth. That doesn't mean that it doesn't continue to happen, but I'm far more like tapped in the moment than I ever been. And so, I think that on a personal development perspective, I think the most impactful, to give something that's like really useful that I think everybody should do, is like 3 times a day, ask yourself, like, why am I doing what I'm doing right now? Like, have it on your phone. And honestly, the more times you ask yourself this, the bigger the result's going to be. Right. And so, like, my day now is a lot different than it used to be. I wake up at like 6, so that my wife can. So Arrow, my kiddo, he wakes up, and this is probably going to change by the time that this podcast is out there. But
Yeah.
I'm not. It's sketched in stone. But he generally wakes up at 6. I take him for like 2.5 hours so that Libby can sleep, like have an extra nap. I go back over, and then I come over for like 2 hours of phone calls each day. And then that's really my work. My work time is like 2 hours in the morning, 2 to 3 hours in the morning. And then I do basically 2 hours of phone calls maximum a day. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not like thinking about things. That doesn't mean that I'm not like excited about things. That doesn't mean that I'm not like, when I say working is like, all right, cool, sweet. I'm like dialed in. Here's what I'm essentially doing. And like, that's really the maximum, in the current world. But that doesn't include the, time I meditated before this and shaved my head before this podcast. That doesn't include a lot of the, when I go out for a ride in my car. That doesn't include all the time that I just like am taking the information that I've absorbed and becoming neutral with it. So one of the things that I also say, I'm trying to give things that are here are actually valuable. One of the things that's very important that I've come to see is very important in my life. I no longer make any decisions until I'm neutral, meaning that if it was a yes or a no, it didn't matter to me. It just does not matter to me. And so when you have charge behind something, so I'll also not talk about something on social media until it no longer, if it has any charge, if I'm trying to prove something or I have charge behind something, I don't need to talk about that right now. Right. And so the truth for me has been, when things become neutral and and the way is clear, that is now when I take action. I do not take action any other time until I can find neutrality. And that's been very powerful in my life. It's made me make much better decision maker. There's no FOMO. There's no proving. It just, I am making decisions that I feel is more aligned with the universe as well.
Yeah, man. Oh, this is why we get along so well. I love that, because I feel like entrepreneurship is the easiest addiction to hide in. And no matter which way you slice it, you're going to get what you're looking for. But I said that
you are going to, you are, I mean, the relationship I was in before Libby, I mean, I went from $1 million in debt to, not being $1 million in debt, but I still worked the same amount that I was $1 million in debt. And, which isn't good. You can't sustain that for a long period of time. Like that's not good for you. And then you just get pumped up on every supplement and nootropic and everything else. And I'm not against that. I'm not against microdosing. I'm not against anything. Like, everything has seasons. Everything has a season, but like you can't get stuck in the season, and you can get very addicted to like the hustle and grind, because it's like this feedback loop where like the more you hustle, the more you grind, the more money you make, more people like you, more people want to be around you. And you're like, you just keep on doing it. But then at some point you're going to be like, well, why am I actually doing this? Like, what am I actually doing this for? And so like in 2019, It was I remember 2018 was my first $1 million month in revenue. And I was like, well, that's fucking crazy. Like, that's fucking wild. And, it was, this way, you have a goal. And one of my goals was to have $1 million month, and goals suck because the goal's only good until you get there. And then 3 days. And then after that, it sucks. You got to get a new one or you get depressed. And so that business did about 14 million in 16 months. And one of the most depressing times in my life. It was really weird. Like, I think I was more like the only part of my life that was really good is that like I met the love of my life. Like everything else, the entire reason I built that business is I was in LA and I wanted to be cool at parties. Like just honest truth. Okay.
Yep.
And like that's the only reason. Like I wanted to be the cool kid. And I made 14 million. I only kept 900,000. Pretty shit profit margin. This is not an e-commerce business. This is a fucking coaching business. You like
Yep.
if you run a coaching business with less than a 25% profit margin, what are you doing? Unless you're really going hardcore growth, which is what I was doing. Now I could have thrown that and did all that type of stuff, but I remember being on my floor, I don't know, March of 2019, and I just crying and being like, how the fuck did I get back here again? Like I've done this I did this in 2011, 2014, 2017. I'm like, how many times do I have to repeat the same lesson? And it was the addiction. It was the addiction of entrepreneurship. It was the addiction of wanting significance and knowing the difference, but then making the decisions, waking up in the morning and going back to the same pattern instead of asking myself, what do I really want? And so then finally, I remember, in May of 2019, my wife and I went to Necker Island, and that was probably the 7th billionaire that I like talked to, like quote unquote mentored by Richard Branson. And he was the first one that I met that I was like, oh, you know what? Like he got a lot of what I want going on. And if you ever end up getting a chance, if you're listening to this, you get a chance to go to Necker Island, by far the most high level consciousness place I've ever traveled to. And I finally wrote down. So I fired my team of 44 people on the way there, basically sold part of the business, let the other part go. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to write down, I'm going to feel what I want. I'm going to write it down and I'm going to commit to that. And I don't care what that means for my life. And I'm on the beach here in Necker Island writing this down. It's over. I still have it. And I wrote my current life right now, like literally what it is today. And it's about 3 years ago. And that was like, but it just got to a point where I was like, I had recognized, oh, you know what? That's the addiction. Oh, that's the addiction. That's the addiction. And working on that and being able to continually say, nope, 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 no. And eventually the no becomes so easy because you know what you're saying yes to. And we went on a long fucking story there just then, but that's been my, like I have dealt with that addiction so much, and I watch my mother still have the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I see, she just visited, her and dad just visited for two weeks. And I'm like, oh, every single time I'm around her, I'm like, yeah, it's that addiction, right? That willful workaholic addiction. And boy, does it feel good.
Yep.
Does it feel good? It feels so yummy and good. And then, it also makes you feel stressed out all the fucking time instead of relaxed. And relaxed is what we all want to feel, but we make all the wrong decisions in order to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were on similar timelines because I was so addicted that I derived all my identity based on the results. And I had to lose it all to start weighing my success or my value based on my inputs and the quality of my inputs, not what they created. And I said this to somebody, I was coaching one of my students the other day, and I was like, this is the craziest part. Most entrepreneurs use their business to derive their identity while neglecting the one relationship they're guaranteed to spend the rest of their life with, which is themselves.
Yeah.
And that was probably, like, for me, one of the hardest lessons. Like when COVID happened, $400,000 a month gone, lost 2 businesses. And I had a very similar experience to you. And I recognized the pattern, and I was like, oh, there's the addiction to chaos that I'm looking to recreate. And I was like, nothing I do is going to fix this overnight. And so we moved up to our house in Mammoth, and dude, I made the craziest rule. I said, I'm going to hike every day until I get an idea. And it took like 61 days. And it was probably
Okay.
like the hardest 61 days of my life because every ounce of me was like, oh, I'll go make an offer. I'll go make a product. I'll go. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, because I'm
Yeah.
going to repeat the same thing. And then here's the craziest part. I hit the top of the mountain in Mammoth and I sat there and I was like, oh, I've had that podcast microphone in my closet for 7 years because I bought it to start a podcast that I never started. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go start the one thing that's guaranteed to not make me any money, but is fully
Yeah.
aligned to what I want to
With
do
me.
and what I want to speak about. And that was a big part for me. And I have to remind myself of it daily, but it's a practice for sure. And so I love the tangents because there's so much intrinsic value in that story when you listen to the
Yeah.
principles of it, of like making sure that we're constantly in the driver's seat and not a passenger to our beliefs or to our wounds or to our
Yeah.
trauma or to the addictions. And so one thing that
Yeah.
I really love and respect about you, and you referenced this a few times today, is this concept of alignment, right?
Yeah.
And how easy it is to say yes or no. And I feel like it's this beautiful harmony of like knowing what you want because you wrote it down.
Yeah.
So you actually have a frame of reference to
Yeah.
measure against versus the early days of my entrepreneurial career. And I think yours as well was, well, I'm going to do whatever it needs today. Whatever. I don't have a frame of reference. I don't have a guiding principle. And so
Yeah.
would you say that when you actually took the time to invest in your clarity and get clear on what you wanted, it helped you realize where you were spending your time to align with? And then like, how do you, because you talk about
Yeah.
neutrality, which I love. It's one of the best, probably in
Yeah.
300 episodes, one of the most powerful fucking nuggets that's come out, because there's so much power to it when you heat it and don't allow it to become mental masturbation, but like really
Yeah.
heating that term.
Yeah.
And so like, how do you now think about alignment? How do you practice it? Like, what does that look like now for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a good question. I don't have any goals.
Mm,
I eliminated goal 3 years ago. I may have an intention, but my intention are come from energetic alignment. Okay. So this is what I mean, which is, let's say, let's use a real life example in my life right now. Okay. So I have three programs that I sell to entrepreneurs. Okay. One's $10,000, one's 30,000, one's 75,000. All right. And each one has a specific thing where I'm putting an input into it. Right. And I only sell, of the 10K one, 250 people can come in that a year. Of the 30K one, 150, and of the accelerator, 40 people. Okay. That is it. I don't care if you literally are standing outside my door with $75,000 US cash and like, are like, hey, I'll give it to you. You don't even have to pay the taxes on it, which would be wonderful. Not going to do it. Okay. Now, how did I get there? How did I decide that? Well, I worked back from how much time do I want to spend on the mentorship side of my business? And how did I do that? All right. So I said, all right, how much time do I need to, how much time am I okay spending in that business? And essentially it was about 8 hours a week. All right. I was okay spending 8 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. I don't need vacations. If my life's aligned, I don't need vacations. Vacations go around what I already do. I don't need to like, if you need a vacation, you generally, there's something off, misaligned in your life. That doesn't mean that I don't like taking trips. I love taking trips, but you don't need a vacation from your life. You don't need to vacate your life. All right. So from the time then I said, okay, where's that money going? The worst thing you can do is have money goals or intentions around money, and you don't know where the fuck the money's going. If you don't know where the money's going, the money's not going to come to you very easily. But you know where that money's going, and that money is going to come so darn easy. It's going to be the easiest money you ever got. Well, here's another thing. If you got the money and then you don't spend it on what you said you were going to spend it on, the universe is like, see you later. Sorry about that. We don't need, we're going to give it to somebody else that can expand the universe. We don't trust you. Universe, once it trusts you with energy, which is money, you can have as much of it as you want. Okay. So then I got back to it and I said, okay, what energetically, what do I feel is possible? And so I pour myself a bath. I get myself in the bath, my accelerator program. Okay. People get direct access to me, Telegram access, the same as being able to text me one-on-one. So that's the main component of it, right? Yes, there's a little group call once a month. Yes, they get 3 phone calls with me a year, one-on-one. But I go to the tub and I pick three numbers, right? So I pick 30, 40, 60. All right. So this would be normal people's goals. Good, best, great. Okay. Well, I don't want to do that. I want intentionality. What can I energetically do that's aligned with all the things that I know of my life? So I go through and I start feeling in my body. What does 30 feel like? All right. And I find that feeling. I find the feeling and I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't really feel that good. And then I say, well, let me go to 60. And I feel anxious and excited and I feel chaos and I feel, all the nut stuff. And I'm like, well, whoa, let's not go there. And so then I find that middle ground and I'm like, okay, cool, sweet. 40 people. All right. Now, where is that money going? All right. That money, I'm taking 100% of that money. I'm taking it and I'm investing it into things that make it so that I make money every single month for the rest of my life. Doesn't matter what it is, right? It's my what I call my intimacy money, right? I'm intimately helping somebody. I'm taking that money and then I'm doing something for me, right? Doesn't matter what. I bought my McLaren with that money in the past. I bought my $3 million home with that in the past. I said before, we got a home in Indiana, got about 3.2 million in renovations. Probably going to spend some of that money over there. Okay. Because I want a fucking infinity pool. And all of that is said, all right, I get out of the top 40 it is. That's done. It's not a goal. It's like, I know I have energetic capacity for 40. My intention is I can hold the space for 40 people. And so now that I found alignment on that one piece, well, now I got to go and find the alignment every single other place in my life in a similar way. And so the easiest way to do that a lot of the times is once you're feeling something, excitement around something, just hold on to it for a couple of weeks, hold on for it a while to have neutrality. I held on to it for about 3 months before I was like, all right. And then finally I was like, okay, cool, sweet. Now I know also where the money is going. Because I'm not going to just do shit just to put money into the bank account. I can make money anytime, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can go out on, both of us, we can go out on our Facebook page and make a bunch of money before 4 o'clock today. Money's not the problem. Knowing where you're putting the energy and how and what that requires of you, and if that's aligned. And so alignment is this silent whisper that you have to listen to with such acute hearing. And that's why it's so easy to get away from it. It's so easy for it to vanish. And I remember watching this video from Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man, and I really like him. And he says it's like this invisible string in life. And so the further you get away, the more your life kind of goes out of control. The more you're in it, the more it's like this beautiful rom-com movie script. And that's what I've noticed is very much of the fact that alignment is like that. So it takes a lot of work to be in alignment. It's very easy to get out of alignment very quickly, but it's also just as easy to get back if you're willing to make the decisions to be able to get back.
I love it, man. I thought everybody listening, I don't say this often, stop and rewind 3.5 minutes. And as my dear friend Garen Jones says, don't listen until you hear it, listen until you know it. Like tattoo that shit on your soul. Because if you want the quote unquote secret, and I won't knock any marketers because Scott and I choose to take a different path, the quote unquote secret, that's one of the big ones. And what I love about that is that earlier when you referenced like having the ability to say no, it gets really, really easy. And then having the discipline to remain in alignment, but to say yes to ourselves and no to the distractions I love. And the cooling off period, I get that. I have that deep rooted creative thing where I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to forget, or it's not going to be there. And I had to learn that lesson. So I do the same thing. But what I do to buy my mental space back is when I get that, I call it the bubble bath feeling. I'm sure you can trademark that one, the bubble bath feeling, right?
Bubble bath,
And then
bubble bath feeling.
I don't want to lose it, but I want to have an integrous relationship with presence and what I'm doing. So I open my calendar and I go 30 days in the future and I put it in my calendar. And I was like, had a bubble bath, felt like this. And then the craziest part is like, I'll forget about it and I'll just go and go and go. And it pops up and I'm like, that feels easy. That excites me. And I'm like, yeah. And I love that. There's so much value in what you just shared, man. It's such a powerful concept.
Yeah, I like it for like, when I do advisory or investing deals, these deals generally take anywhere from a month to 4 months to get kind of done on paper. And that's what I actually love about it. Because, you bring anything to me, I'm getting excited about it. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm just like, yeah, that's fucking cool. And so, you get 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and then negotiating, contract. You really quickly, you're like, I don't want to fucking do this. Or you're like, yeah, this is easy. Like, let's just get this kind of deal done. And it's great. And so, but when you don't have that sort of time in between, like when you're doing deals or like it also comes with when you say yes or no to having clients, like the specific type of client. Like I have so many people come to me and I'm like, no, sorry. I'm like, come back in a year. Just a wrong person for me to mentor. And I'm really good at mentoring people if they were the right person. I'm really bad at mentoring somebody if they're the wrong one. And I think that, it like comes to every decision, like every decision in your life. Like it's not just a business thing. Like this is every single, like every decision in your life. When the renovation costs came back for our Indiana home, so keep in mind we bought the home for like 1.2 million on like 4.5 acres of land. It's on the back of about 160 of protected land. And so, I don't know what renovations cost. I got a vision. Me and my wife got a vision. So, I was like, it'd probably be like $1 million in renovations. Well, it comes back, it's going to be about 3.2 million. Right. And I wrote a post about this a couple of days ago. And so I love playing both sides, right? What's in a line, what's not a line, what's abundant, what's scarcity. So instantaneous, I'm like, gee whiz, $3 million. So then your mind goes, well, I could do phases. I could pull it back a little bit. I don't need the infinity pool. Maybe we don't do the theater. Maybe we're doing like a Zen Japanese style inside. So very expensive because of the wood particularly. And then I'm like, but what's aligned? And then I was like, oh, yeah, no, we're doing that. That's a line. And so, I go, and before I make this decision, of course, it's myself, my wife, I go into the shower and I just ask the universe, where am I supposed to be right now? What am I, what environment I'm supposed to be in? Because I know if my environment, if I can control my environment, that doesn't mean control and bad control, but if I can control my environment, I can show up and be my brilliant self. If I can't control my environment, I can't. This is why I fly private. This is why I do the things, I spend the money I do for my environment, because when I'm in an environment that I feel comfortable in, I can just like make magic. If I'm not, not so much. Waking up in a home where I'm like, oh, you know what? We didn't do the bathroom the way we want it because we tried to save money. That scarcity will go into every single thing I ever do. Just like every single ad you write, every single email you write, every single thing you create, everything that you felt in that moment is embedded into the literal words that is there.
Preach it. Yes.
So you go and hire a copywriter and you're underpaying them. You're like, oh, well, I can get them for this. And they can't pay their bills. I remember when I hire a copywriter, I asked them, how much money do you need to live? And they're like, 6,000. Okay, cool, sweet. How much money do you need to like not have to worry about anything? Like 9. Okay, cool, sweet. So I'm going to pay you 12. But you're going to promise me you're not going to go and blow it on dumb shit and make it so that you now have to make 14, because that's the normal human behavior. And the truth is, if everything that you put out there into the world has embedded how you feel in that moment, which is also why it's so important to be neutral and to be relaxed when you're putting things out there into the world, because that also attracts people that want to be relaxed. And relaxation is the number one thing everyone's trying to buy. Why do you want to be a millionaire? So you can be relaxed. Why do you want to be healthy? So you don't die, so you can be relaxed. Why do you want a great relationship? So you're not fighting with another person. Why do you want anything? It is the number one thing to just be able to relax. Everything is, you are just selling relaxation.
And I gotta close this loop, because earlier, the marketer in me can't leave open loops, but I'm gonna land this plane. Earlier, when you were talking about, when we were talking about the addiction of entrepreneurship and that charge, one of the things that I tell people, I'm like, if you're writing it charged, whether you realize it or not, it's manipulation and it's felt. It's whether you do it intentionally or not, there's subconscious manipulation, because we're looking to gain something from that post or create an action or an intention. And it's the antithesis of permission-based marketing, which is the world that I choose to live in, and you as well.
Yep.
And so there's like, heed this. So everybody, I'm gonna rescind my previous assignment, and I'm gonna say just listen to the whole fucking podcast like 3 times. Okay. Um, this will be one of the rarefied earth podcasts that I go re-listen to. I'll fast forward through my own voice, but like I will gladly heed this. And I love it, man. Like it took me
Yeah,
losing
it's
everything
important.
to get to the point to like understand what you're truly saying and live in that. And I'd say now the only time that things ever feel hard is only when I've lost sight of alignment. And
Yeah.
it might feel hard and overwhelming. The whole world is burning, but that's why I have my practices. Like get into my breath, get into my body. Like here's my favorite hack. And I know you do this. Breath work wasn't doing it for me anymore. So now I wear a
Yep.
stethoscope and listen to my own
That's good.
heart when I do
No,
breath
I love
work.
that. I
And it
love
is
that.
like the greatest thing that I've
I
like
love
ever
that.
done. Like 7 seconds, and I'm like back, like totally,
That's
totally
amazing.
back.
That's amazing. That's really cool. That is a cool hack.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
pretty good one.
yeah. I think losing it all, you got to do that at least once in your life. I think if you don't lose it all at least once in your life, you're missing out.
Yeah.
And I think you're missing out a lot. Yeah, and I've lost it all twice. And most millionaires, you look at statistics, I think it's like 80% plus of millionaires lose it all twice. And I'm a deca-millionaire at this point, which is cool to say, which is way more cooler to say than it actually is in reality, because like nothing really changed. Whether you have 1 million or 2 million or 4 million or 10 million, literally your life really honestly doesn't change that much. Um, but I wouldn't have been able to do it with the confidence I have, because once you lose it, you know how to not lose it. And once you lose it, you gain a level of confidence that I don't think is possible, a level of resourcefulness, a level of surrender to the universe that is almost impossible, in my opinion, to gain if you haven't lost it all. And so losing it all is just this beautiful, wonderful, crazy experience that also makes it so you got something to talk about on a podcast. Because if it was all roses, what the hell would you talk about?
Yeah, man. Yeah. And my dear friend Garen Jones, I don't know if you Garen, but you guys would get along great. He was locked up in federal prison in
Mm,
France for drug trafficking, and basically no way to get out. And so he reread The Power of Positive Thinking like 380 times
wow.
until he basically was the book. And
Right.
in a court system that doesn't have mistrials or retrials, out of nowhere, he was released and free to
Wow.
go. And one of the
Yeah.
things that he said, and one of the most powerful things, and this is something I do, and I feel like you'll appreciate this, is that now when I think about it, when the things get hard, or you get hit with a lawsuit that costs you 75 grand a week for 18
Yep.
months or things like that, I just say thank you. And I
Right.
sit with that until the charge is
Yeah.
gone. And I'm like, thank you. Like, there's a reason
Yeah.
this is showing up. Like, this is a muscle that I can only
Yep.
flex because I have the experience, the know how, and it was
Yeah.
come to me to be flexed. And
Yeah. You
here
can't
you have
skip leg day. You can't
you
skip
can't
leg
skip
day.
leg day, bro.
You can't skip leg day. That's the
I
thing.
feel
You
like a
can't
good
skip
title
leg day.
for this show is like leg day is the secret to successful
Leg
entrepreneurship
day.
or business.
Yep. Yep.
So I
Leg
want
day
to
is the
land this
secret.
playing. So I want to be respectful of your time. But,
Of course.
in the world of Scott, which I highly respect everything that you do,
Yep.
you've shifted a ton. Like what are some of the things that you're most excited about right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited about the next 10 years in the education niche. I think this online world that I'm in is going to really grow up over the next 10 years. I think it's going to be like a normal, 3 years ago, I told people what I do, no one knew. After COVID, that really changed it. We got probably 5 to 7 years of evolution during COVID in this online niche, which is beautiful. Um, so I'm very invested in education companies. Over the next few years, I want to have at least 100 certification companies that I'm, per owner inside of my ecosystem. Because I think certification companies, if you fast forward 10 to 15 years from now, is going to replace a lot of universities. I think people are going to like self-select what they want to do in the world, and they're going to go to mentors, and they're going to go to people that are like actual experts, not just like book smart experts, and like learn from them. I think we're going to live in a world where like accreditations and apprenticeships and certifications make it so that you understand how to do something. So really at the end of the day, I'm all in on education. And that's what I'm most excited. All the investments I'm making is either in that world or supporting that world, meaning, I have the software platform for the person once they've actually graduated the certification so that they can actually help somebody or, whatever it might be, or the website builder so that people can have their own one page website or whatever it is at the end of the day. And that's what I'm most excited about. And because I believe that that's why we have a lot of work to do on leveling of consciousness on the planet. And that is the single biggest thing that's going to have the largest amount of impact, more than anything else, over the next 10 to 15 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
man.
that's what I'm most pumped about. That's much more my direction of what I'm going to be talking about. And listen, I love building businesses because I see the impact that they have. I see the ripple effect, and what else could I do that has that amount of return for the planet? Nothing.
Yeah,
I even
man.
went on a 6-month sabbatical trying to figure that out in 2020, and here I am. I came right back to what I went at the end of 2020, early 2021. I took 6 months off. I was like, I'm not going to make any money for 6 months. First time in my life, and that was also impossible. Money just kept on coming in. But I posed the question to the universe: what do you want me to do, universe? I'll do whatever you want. And here I am. It divinely guided me like it always does.
I love it, man. So I've only asked this question like 3 times, but I am so fucking excited to hear your answer to this question. And don't
Mm,
worry, it's an out of left field one, but somebody asked this to me,
yeah,
and it was my favorite question I've ever been asked, and I reserve it for very special people that are deep thinkers and
appreciate it.
care about people. So,
Yeah,
if you could combine two animals to be your spirit animal, what would they
yeah.
be and why?
Good question. Well, I very much feel like I'm a wolf to start with, and so that I think that I mean I kind of have that sort of little bit of a pack mentality. Like if you're with me, you're with me. I kind of got your back. I've always been like that, so I've always resonated with a wolf on on that aspect. Um, and I've been if you take the beard away from me, I kind of look a little bit like a turtle. So, which like, and I've always liked turtles, and I haven't owned that as like a spirit animal because it's like not a sexy animal, but like, I do like the turtle life, which is like slow and steady wins the race. So I think, yeah, wolf mixed with a turtle would look kind of funny. It would be
Yep.
like the Ninja Turtles, but like with a wolf head or something.
Yep.
But yeah, I think a wolf with a turtle is probably the direction I'd be going.
I love it. So
Yeah.
I have to just throw one curveball into your renovation plans that in your Japanese Zen
Yeah.
koi pond, you put a
Yeah.
turtle in the pond
Turtle.
or
Oh yeah.
in the
I
house.
had a turtle when I was a kid. I had a turtle when I was a kid, but he ran away on me.
Ah,
He ran away. He ran
to,
away.
to
So,
think about a turtle and a wolf together, I'll tell you what my answer was. I said
yeah.
a bald eagle and an orca whale.
But yeah, you know what? Actually, I feel those for you. I feel
Yeah.
those for you. I like those. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's really interesting. That's a good question. That's a really, really, really good question.
It is.
Also makes me, I have the opportunity to invest in a spirit hoods company. Maybe this is a sign from the universe that I need to put a little money into that one.
Maybe if I help bump that in any direction, here's the guy who's like sat with Mother Aya quite a few
Yep,
times, and my spirit
yep,
animal is a jaguar,
yep.
and I get
Yeah.
asked this question post many of those
Post.
experiences,
Yep.
and the only thing that popped into my brain, like into my soul, was bald eagle and orca
I love
whale,
it.
and I meditated on that for weeks after, like I couldn't stop thinking
I
about
love
it,
that.
and it was
That's so
fun. It's
good.
a fun question.
That's so good. Yeah. No, it is a fun question. I love it. Well,
Awesome. So
listen,
the
man. I know you got to go. We're on time. I know we could talk for another 3 hours,
Oh
but it
yeah,
was fun
I'm going to
hanging
do
with
this
you.
now, so you can't say no. But whenever you open up your schedule again in a couple months, we're doing round two, so that everybody
All right.
listen, because I probably have 100 more
I can
questions for
definitely
you.
do that.
But we'll do the traditional wrap up. Where is the best place for people to connect with you? I mean, I highly recommend everybody at least follows your Facebook profile because I extract massive value and I love reading your posts. But where can everybody find you? Best place to connect with you?
Yeah, I'd go to scuttleoldford.com, and then, my email list is probably my favorite place to get the value from me. I'm not just like spammy, scammy sending stuff to you that I actually like. I really put a lot of love and care into that. And then, it depends on what kind of person you are. I got a TikTok and, I got the reels and all the fun shit. Depends on how you consume content. But either way, you go to scottoldford.com and I'm going to follow you around the internet until Mal just keep on following you around the internet.
Yes, he
That's really
will.
Mal knows. So
The king
enjoy.
of omnipresence. So I will make sure I consume the TikTok so we can compare our dancing skills or
Our
just the
dancing
trends
skills.
we're following. Yeah. Well,
I
man,
love it.
listen, this has been a long time coming. This was an absolute honor and a gift for me. And so for myself and everybody listening, like, thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing your time with us and sharing this. Like, this was an absolute gem. So thank you.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate every single one of you that are listening to this. And I'm sure we'll see each other soon.
We will. And so for everybody listening, this was another episode of the Mind of George Show. So remember that relationships will always beat algorithms. So I'll either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, it's time to listen to the outro. Bye.